In the unforgiving expanse of the Arctic, some legends are born from ice and steel. This is the story of one such legend. Our story begins with the SS Baychimo, a 1,300-ton steel cargo steamer launched in Sweden in 1914, built to endure. Owned by the Hudson's Bay Company, its mission was to navigate the treacherous Northwest Passage, a vital artery for trade. The ship was a lifeline, transporting precious furs from remote Inuit settlements along the Victoria Island coast of Canada's north. For years, its captain and crew expertly navigated the icy waters, accustomed to the region's sudden and dramatic shifts in weather. The Baychimo would push through floating ice, its reinforced hull groaning but always prevailing against the immense pressure of the Arctic. It was a workhorse of the north, a familiar sight against the stark white backdrop, smoke billowing from its single funnel. The ship carried not just cargo, but the stories and livelihoods of those who depended on its reliable annual journey. But in the autumn of 1931, at the end of a successful trading run, the Arctic decided to claim the Baychimo. The ship was loaded with its valuable cargo of furs, and winter was closing in faster than anyone had anticipated. On October 1st, 1931, near the coast of Alaska, the sea began to freeze. A sudden drop in temperature caught them by surprise. Within hours, the open water vanished, replaced by a solid sheet of pack ice that gripped the Baychimo's hull like a vice. The powerful engines were useless. The ship was trapped, a tiny speck in an endless, frozen desert. The crew understood the danger. An icebound ship could be crushed by the immense, shifting pressure of the frozen sea. With no hope of breaking free, the captain made a difficult decision. The crew would have to abandon ship for safety. They trekked for half a mile over the treacherous, uneven ice to the relative safety of the Alaskan shoreline. There, they established a makeshift camp, using whatever materials they could find to build shelters against the biting wind. From the shore, they watched their ship, waiting and hoping for a change in the weather that would set it free. Days turned into weeks. The cold deepened, and the ice held its prisoner fast, showing no signs of releasing its grip. The crew's supplies were limited, and the prospect of spending an entire winter stranded in the wilderness was becoming a terrifying reality. Miraculously, after nearly a month, a temporary shift in wind and current caused the ice to break up around the ship. The Baychimo was free. The crew scrambled back aboard, engines fired up, and for a glorious moment, they were underway again. But their freedom was tragically short-lived. Just one day later, the ice closed in again, this time with even greater finality. They were now trapped more securely than before, and the crew's brief flicker of hope was extinguished by the brutal Arctic reality. Resigned to their fate, the captain and crew decided to prepare for the long winter ahead, knowing they were stuck until spring. They chose a large, stable ice floe near the ship and began constructing a more substantial wooden shack to live in. This small hut on the ice would be their home for the foreseeable future, a tiny bastion of warmth against the polar night. The Baychimo stood silent nearby, a frozen monument that served as both their warehouse and a constant reminder of their predicament. They settled into a routine, rationing supplies and trying to keep their spirits up as the days grew shorter and colder. But the Arctic had one more terrifying surprise in store for the crew of the stranded vessel. A storm was brewing. On November 24th, the sky turned a menacing shade of gray. An Arctic blizzard of unimaginable ferocity descended upon them. Winds howled with hurricane force and the temperature plummeted. Visibility dropped to zero in a complete whiteout. The crew huddled inside their small wooden shack, listening to the storm's deafening roar and the groaning of the ice below. For 3 long days and nights, the tempest raged without pause. Leaving the shelter meant certain doom. They were completely blind and deaf to the world outside, trapped in their tiny wooden box on the shifting ice. The very ground beneath them shuddered as the storm's power broke and shifted the massive ice floes all around them. They couldn't see the Baychimo. They could only imagine what the incredible forces of the storm were doing to its steel hull. The noise was constant and overwhelming, a physical presence that shook the hut and the men inside to their core. All they could do was wait, conserve their heat and energy, and pray their small shelter would hold together. When the storm finally broke and an eerie silence fell, they had no idea what they would find outside. As the wind died down, the crew cautiously dug their way out of their snow-entombed shelter into a transformed world. The landscape was an unrecognizable chaos of shattered ice and massive new pressure ridges created by the storm's fury. The men's eyes scanned the horizon for the familiar shape of their ship, but there was nothing. The Baychimo was gone. Where the mighty vessel had been firmly lodged, there was now only a massive ridge of broken ice pushed up from the depths. The captain and crew came to the only logical conclusion. The storm's power had broken the ship apart and sent it to the bottom. Their ship, their cargo, and their only way home had been swallowed by the Arctic. A profound sense of loss settled over them. They were now truly stranded, with only the supplies they had in their small hut and the prospect of a long wait for rescue. The company was notified by aircraft that the ship was lost, and arrangements were made to fly the crew back to civilization. For all intents and purposes, the story of the SS Baychimo had come to a tragic and definitive end. But the ship itself had other plans. Its journey was not over. It had only just begun a new, solitary chapter. A few days after the Great Storm, an Inuit hunter was tracking seals across the frozen sea, miles from the crew's camp. He saw something impossible on the horizon, a steamship drifting silently where no ship should be. It was the Baychimo. He traveled to the crew's camp and reported his sighting. They were incredulous, but the hunter's report was firm. The storm had not sunk the ship. It had broken it free from the ice and sent it drifting on its own. The crew quickly gathered their gear. Their ship was alive, and its incredibly valuable cargo of furs was still aboard. They tracked the vessel for several days, finally catching up to it. It was battered and coated in ice, but intact. Boarding their own ship felt surreal. It was an empty, frozen world, creaking and groaning in the cold wind. The priority was the cargo. The crew worked quickly in the biting cold to get to the hold where the furs were stored. They successfully retrieved the most valuable bales, a fortune in furs that would have otherwise been lost to the Arctic forever. With the cargo secured, they had another decision to make. What was to be done with the ship itself? The captain thoroughly assessed the ship's condition. While afloat, it was severely damaged and structurally compromised by the ice. It was clear that the Baychimo was not seaworthy. Attempting to sail it would be a foolish and dangerous gamble. Furthermore, they had no way of knowing when it might get trapped again, or worse, break free and drift away. The Hudson's Bay Company concluded that the risk was too great. The ship was to be officially and finally abandoned. The crew took what essential supplies they could carry, preparing to leave their vessel for the last time. It was a somber moment, saying goodbye to the ship that had been their home and their livelihood in this harsh land. They left the Baychimo to the mercy of the elements, fully expecting it to sink during the next storm or the spring thaw. The remaining crew members were airlifted to safety, carrying with them the valuable furs and an unbelievable story of survival. The company filed its insurance claim. The book was closed on the SS Baychimo, or so everyone thought. Left alone in the vast wilderness, the ship was now free from its crew, its cargo, and its purpose. It was a true ghost. The Baychimo did not sink. Instead, it began an incredible, lonely odyssey that would last for nearly 4 decades. Over the years, sightings began to trickle in from the most remote corners of the Arctic Ocean, confounding experts. A few months after its abandonment, it was seen by a group of prospectors who were unable to approach it. In 1933, a group of Inuit tried to board it, but a sudden storm blew in, forcing them to retreat. Another expedition managed to board it in 1934, but they were trapped on board for 10 days by the shifting ice. It was seen from the air, a dark shape moving with the currents, a ship with no captain, no crew, and no destination. Each sighting added to the mystery. The ship seemed to have a life of its own, appearing and disappearing at will. It became a phantom, a silent wanderer of the north, its hull growing rustier and more battered with each passing year. The Hudson's Bay Company tried to salvage it several times, but the ship was always too far, too inaccessible, or the weather too poor. The ship had become a part of the Arctic, as wild and unpredictable as the ice and storms that governed its movements. As the decades passed, the SS Baychimo transcended from a mere derelict vessel into a full-blown maritime legend. It earned a new name, spoken with a mix of awe and trepidation: the ghost ship of the Arctic. Newspaper articles and radio programs recounted its incredible story, capturing the public's imagination around the world. Among the Inuit communities of the North, the ship became a fixture of local lore, a known but unapproachable wanderer. Each new, improbable sighting only added another layer to its enduring myth. How could it survive for so long? The ship was a testament to its own sturdy construction, and perhaps a great deal of sheer, dumb luck. It became a symbol of resilience, an object that refused to surrender to the overwhelming power of nature. Some mariners claimed it was a bad omen, a cursed vessel doomed to sail the ice forever, never finding rest. Others saw it as a romantic figure, the ultimate lonely explorer on a journey with no end. Whatever people believed, the Baychimo had secured its place in history, but its final chapter was yet to come. The sightings grew less frequent as the 1960s wore on. The old ship was becoming harder to distinguish from the ice. Then, in 1969, 38 years after it was abandoned, the Baychimo was spotted for the last time. It was seen by a group of Inuit, once again frozen fast in a massive ice pack in the Beaufort Sea. This was the final confirmed sighting of the legendary ghost ship. After that, it simply vanished. No trace of it has ever been found since. The years passed, turning into decades with only silence from the north. Did it finally succumb to the pressure of the ice and sink to the bottom of the Arctic Ocean? This is the most likely theory. The ship, after its long and lonely journey, finally found its resting place. In 2006, the Alaskan government began a project to locate the wreck, but so far, the search has yielded nothing. And so, the mystery endures. The final fate of the SS Baychimo remains unknown, lost to time and ice. Or perhaps, just perhaps, it is still out there, a silent phantom, waiting to be seen one last time.